Good afternoon. You've joined us on Likeable Science here on ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm Ethan Allen, your host, and Likeable Science is all about making science accessible, fun, helping everyone realize that they too can be a part of science and have a role in science. Today, I have three guests on my show. Welcome. I have Gloria, Dawn, and Bernice. Gloria Brasuel, Dawn Robertson, and Bernice Bowers, all affiliated with AAUW, right? And they are putting on, and I guess the three of you are the key players in organizing a Tech Savvy conference that's coming up on March 14th. So we're going to highlight this conference a little bit and talk about what goes on there, what is the thrust of it, and how it's organized, and why they're also doing this. But maybe to start, maybe we could just a little bit of background on AAUW since they're sponsoring it.
Sure. So AAUW is a national organization. We are all involved and members of our Honolulu branch. And our mission is advocacy for women and girls through philanthropy, research, education, and advocacy.
Oh, okay. And AAUW stands for American Association of University Women? Okay,
yes,
that's what I thought. Excellent. Then, so how did you come up with this tech savvy concept?
It actually started in 2006 with one of our branches in Buffalo, New York, and it's been very successful. And just 2 years ago, AAUW acquired the license and rolled it out nationwide. So this is going to be the second year. They piloted it last year, and this will be the second year that we've done this. First year in Hawaii.
Excellent, excellent. And so what is, in short, in brief, what is Tech Savvy?
Tech Savvy is a one-day conference for girls, grades 6 to 9, and it's focused on STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math.
Excellent. Yes, that's certainly, it's a critical time in girls' lives because a number of the studies that have been done show this is a period when girls begin to lose interest. Up to that point in elementary levels, they have achievement and interest levels equal to that of boys in terms of most of the science and math subjects.
Yeah.
But by high school, they typically have lost interest and are falling behind. And so it's really a pivotal time in their lives. So it's wonderful you guys are putting this on. So you say they've run this conference now 1 year previously, another branch of AAUW?
Yeah, 10 branches on the mainland, 10 different states. So
Okay.
it's one branch per state per year. And so they've increased it by 50% this year. So now we have 15 states doing it.
Okay.
And our first time in Hawaii.
Okay. And what made you guys decide that this was the activity you were going to do?
Well, I've been wanting to do it since they rolled it out. And for me personally, I think, you know, our nation, we have such an untapped wealth of resources in girls and women going into STEM careers that, you know, it's time to start working with that group.
Absolutely true. It's women now get more than half the doctorates from our institutions of higher education, but are still woefully underrepresented, at least in some areas of science and technology.
Yes.
And this certainly needs to be addressed, and addressing it at the younger level, I think, is a smart, strategically leveraged move, right?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So, but beyond this conference being for girls, this conference also has a parent track, right?
Yes, it does.
So, what's sort of the again in brief, what's the point on that? What do you see as the value of that?
Well, to keep the parents engaged and so the reinforcement at home as well as at school in growing the girls' enthusiasm, keeping them in the STEM fields.
Excellent.
I think also, building on what Gloria said, we're finding that there are really brand new career paths open to not just girls but boys as well, and careers that we haven't even thought of yet that are emerging. And parents sometimes are going through this paradigm shift of learning that there are careers that have not yet been defined. So how do you support your child in learning the skills that are the basic skills of becoming a critical thinker, of becoming entrepreneurial, of really looking at what are you trying to solve with the science or the engineering that you're interested in, not just going down a path that someone else has plowed.
Right, very much. 15 years ago, if you told somebody they could go into nanotechnology, they would have scratched their head and looked very puzzled. And now there are thousands and thousands of jobs every year opening up in various nano-related fields.
So. And it's kind of interesting because when you look at fields that you wouldn't think are technology-oriented, there's a technology slant or an engineering or science or math slant to almost everything, from design to cosmetology to, you know, journalism. And that's the other part of having parents become more aware of how critical it is that especially girls are exposed to STEM, so that no matter what path they choose, even if it's a very typical liberal arts background, they will have that additional edge, if you will, that additional angle to look at everything.
Right. Basic science literacy is not an option, really. I mean, it should be a fundamental requirement, really, for the 21st century to understand the fundamentals of science and what science and engineering can do for the world and why. At least some level of mathematical expertise is called for. Absolutely. So, tell me a little bit about the different roles that you're playing in this, organizing this conference.
Well, I'm the chair and have a co-chair. We have a great committee.
Okay.
It's not just the three of us, but we're definitely very active. And Dawn is our curriculum coordinator, co-chair.
I have helped along with others at the school that I work at, and some help from the committee. We've found a great bunch of presenters who will be presenting for the girls and helping them show the passion of the STEM field.
Oh, excellent.
And I'm focusing on that parent component, which is a parallel session, basically. So we're trying to address the whole system that surrounds the girls.
Okay. Sounds wonderful. I'm being told that we need to go to a commercial break right now, so we're going to come back in a moment or two and continue this discussion about the Tech Savvy program. Your Likeable Science, I'm your host, Ethan Allen, talking with AAUW representatives here, Gloria, Dawn, and Bernice. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Andrew Howard. I'm an astronomer at the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii up in Manoa. I'd like to tell you about the annual open house that we're having. This year, it is on April 6th, 11 to 4 p.m. It's an all-ages event, kids, grown-ups, even people in between. Everyone is welcome. We have a lot of really fun activities. You get to meet astronomers, look at yourself in an infrared camera, play with Legos, make robots, look at videos. You can even make some of the kids like to make comets out of gravel and snow. Even adults like to do that too. You'll be able to look at the sun with a solar camera safely. It's really a great activity. We do this every year in April, and I hope to see you this year. Thanks.
And you're back here on Likeable Science. I'm your host, Ethan Allen. Likeable Science is one of the many great things that ThinkTech Hawaii produces. Today on Likeable Science, I'm joined by three lovely women from AAUW, Gloria, Dawn, and Bernice, and we're talking at the Tech Savvy Conference coming up on March 14th, all-day conference primarily for girls in grades 6 through 9, but also for their parents. All about learning STEM, learning the skills associated with STEM, the sort of skills that complement STEM, and for the parents, how to support STEM and how to support STEM learning. So I was intrigued by the various topics that you had listed as some of your presentations or workshops or whatever you're calling them exactly for the girls. Maybe we can talk a little bit about those, because that'll help give, I think, a better sense about what girls could expect from a conference like this.
Sure. We have 3 sessions in the morning for the girls and 1 session in the afternoon. The 3 sessions in the morning deal with the STEM field, which is science, technology, engineering, math. And we have a lot of really awesome choices for them. Things that like getting a glimpse at how it was like to be a surgeon or an avionics engineer, an environmentalist, and many different things like that. In the afternoon, we've dedicated it to what we are calling the savvy skills, things like advocacy, leadership, and things like that.
Excellent, excellent. Because those might correspond to what are sometimes called the soft skills, that is, as opposed to sort of technical know-how. It's more how to get along with people, how to manage organizations in a sense, and get things done in committees and on teams.
Yes, yes. But definitely, no matter what kind of STEM field you go into, you need to know these kind of skills in order to kind of thrive in your profession.
Right, right, indeed. Beyond STEM fields,
yes,
I think
absolutely.
It's pretty true.
Absolutely.
Almost everything we do these days is
yes.
social, huh?
Yes.
And have to understand that kind of stuff. So, tell me, you have one of your topics is scalpel stat. So is it statistics or medicine,
no statistics. We have Dr. Holly Olsen, who's coming in to help the girls learn a little bit what it's like to be in the operating room. And then they're gonna get a chance to use real tools to suture up something fake, but it's synthetic, but it would give you the same kind of feel of how it would really be like.
Excellent. That kind of hands-on learning is so important.
Absolutely.
To have people really experience things, do science.
Yes.
What they now talk about in the next generation science standards as the practices of science, getting students actually involved in doing the things that scientists do rather than just reading about it and answering questions. Yeah, so excellent. So you also, I noticed one of your topics is on one of my very favorite subjects, is chocolate.
Absolutely. And who knew there's science in chocolate, but there absolutely is. When I was talking to this presenter, she was saying it's amazing how many different things. She's a food innovation technician, so her job is to take different types of chocolates and come up with different recipes related to them. So she'll be sharing about the sweet, rich history of chocolate, and then having the girls do some activities with that and kind of innovating the chocolate.
Excellent, excellent. No, that's true. It's a very hot field these days too, because I guess that chocolate is getting increasingly rare, and is people are worried about that there's not going to be enough of it. The prices are going to start skyrocketing, and so I'm sure the food chemists are all scrambling to see what they can do to get more chocolate flavor out of less chocolate. That could be a fun task. And you've got some, I see you've got an hour of code. That's one of I know a number of different groups now are doing coding.
Yes, that's a big one now, and I think that's one that girls are definitely underrepresented in. But once they get a feel, I think sometimes the word coding or programming, kids hear that and like, oh my gosh, that's hard, I can't do that. But you know, if you just start, now there's plenty of programs and teaching like this, you start simply, and then you can work your way up, and it's not like any different from anything else. It's very doable and fun, actually. So I have one of my coworkers is helping me out with this one, and she is going to be using either Frozen or Angry Birds to kind of help you learn how to code. So it should be exciting.
Yeah, there's I guess a move afoot now saying that all kids should learn to code. Coding is in some sense thought to be a critical skill for next generation kids, because that's basically the medium that many of them are going to use to express themselves during school and beyond.
Yes, I mean, it stems from things that they use in their everyday life, like any type of technology, any app that they use kind of stems from, programming in more developed way. Right,
and it's a great way of modeling systematic thinking and logical flow, and really get your mind working in a very sort of scientific, evidence-based way.
Yes.
Super. And what about these savvy skills that you talked about? So you have, I saw this one topic that really, it rang a bell with me. It's called selfie, click, click. It seems to me kids don't need to know how to take selfies. They do lots of this anyhow.
Yes, but it goes far and beyond that. So social media is such a huge part of students' lives and the world, the world now. So this one is talking about how you can use the social media to produce like a positive image and a positive digital footprint in your life that people will be able to look at and be impressed with.
Excellent. Now, that's very critical, because so many kids don't realize that everything they post to the media, their favorite Facebook site or whatever, is soon can be spread around the world,
Yes.
and can follow them for a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's excellent. So this is wonderful. Was there any evidence from the past year's tech-savvy events that they were having good impacts on the girls? Do you know anything about the evaluation that was done on the programs?
Well, we're continuing, AEW National is continuing to collect data.
Okay.
So they know that the pioneered program in Buffalo, New York was successful. As far as our program that we're running now, this is our second year.
Sure.
So we have actually a pre and post surveys that we give the girls and the parents so that we can collect data and analyze it moving forward.
Excellent. No, you've got to do that to find out. You want to be sure you're running a program that's effective
Yes.
and generating the kinds of outcomes you want in terms
Yes.
of developing the qualities and the leadership skills, all that kind of stuff. Excellent. So let's talk just for a little bit get into the what's in it for the parents here then.
Sure.
So what can a parent expect, I guess, from the conference?
The main thing is the parents will be exposed to different tools and different methods that they can use to help support their daughters find, number one, what their passion is, and then different ways that those passions can be tied to careers that have some aspect of STEM in them. Role models are very important, we know, to girls, and for parents to understand how to help their child self-discover role models, how to work with the child to elicit the types of insights of what the child's passions really are. There are some typical tools. We'll have career planning sorts of tools, but then there's some that are not so evident. Like when a child is really interested in someone and someone's career, and you start to look with that child at patterns across different people that they're interested in. That gives you an indication of how to have the child identify on their own what they'd like to be, but how to support them. So parents are really going to be exposed to also different careers themselves, as we mentioned, that they might not necessarily have thought were science-based. Everything that from historian roles to, in the Windward side where this workshop will be held, there's sort of an embarrassment of riches of place-based science programs that are really tied to Native Hawaiian history in the area. There are restorations of fish ponds going on that the Pacific American Foundation, for example, has spearheaded for many years that combine engineering with history and with a sense of ethnic identity. And also hands-on work in the fields. So Pai Pai Oheia is another one. So just exposing parents to different ways that they can encourage an interest in STEM that may be non-textbook.
Yeah, absolutely. No, one of my guests some months ago was a young woman who had written an app for one of the local fish ponds so visitors could do a self-guided tour, they could get data out of this, find out sort of where to go, how to do it, what was going on all around the fish pond, and very, very intriguing, very intriguing. So I know a big part of this parent track also has to do with this thing called design thinking. Can you tell us a little about what design thinking is all about?
Yes.
Sure. There is a group in Hawaii called Design Thinking Hawaii that was trained by Stanford University's design school. And the idea was to grow design thinking specialists who would then donate their time to help the community learn how to use this tool. It's one of many tools that is used in developing uses of technology, a type of service, pretty much anything where there's a user who you want to really help involve in the design of a product or service. Design thinking is a way of accelerating the whole process of developing a useful tool or system. So one of the things that we know is that design thinking is becoming an important component in a lot of different academic programs, but also in the workplace. So for parents to really understand this and support their daughters as they're looking to apply this way of interpreting need and translating it into a useful product or service, we thought we'd actually teach them how to do it, kind of at a basic level, but really applied. In the case of their daughters, being interested in some aspect of science, how do you look at ways that can be a solution? And you look at the problem first and draw from there, rather than coming up with a great idea that you're going to somehow market the heck out of and make it fit. And that's kind of design thinking.
I see, yeah, and that's really critical. There are so many examples around of people who find a solution and implement that solution without ever really looking truly at the problem, or talking to people who are going to be impacted, and it turns out so often to be the wrong solution.
Right, exactly.
Classic case I was hearing out recently in Nepal, where the household cooking fires are very smoky, cause all kinds of respiratory problems for mothers and children particularly. Somebody came up with this great idea of these nice, neat little ovens, relatively inexpensive because the way they're designed, that they're essentially smoke-free, beautiful, beautiful design. They bought a whole bunch of these, distributed them widely. Great idea. Came back a year later, and all of the people there were using them as storage containers, basically. So it was the only sort of airtight storage container they had, and they could keep their certain of their foods from going bad, basically, and keep them out of the out of insects and all. So they weren't using them as ovens; they were using them as basically boxes. So they hadn't quite found what the real need there was, what the real question was.
Well, which is so interesting, because that's a perfect design thinking example where the user actually created a use, so you would actually have two projects that actually iterate.
Right, you could do it that way, right. And I'm trying to work I work in the region very strongly based in the communities, and having them tell me what it is they need, because I don't live in Yap or Chup, so I don't know what they may need in the way of help with their water.
Well, that, it brings up another aspect of community building, because so much of the issues facing our community really do involve a very strong element of STEM. For example, I live in Lanikai. There's this horrible traffic issue and impact on the environment. If girls are encouraged to look at their immediate communities and the solutions, to problems that they have, not just using design thinking, but really STEM will come up as one of those elements that they really will have to employ. And so if they see the relevance of what they're doing to their immediate community, oftentimes that's another thing that we encourage parents to do, and that they'll hear a lot about during this session.
Absolutely. Jay Fidel, who runs ThinkTech here, and I were recently talking about just that same topic, about the need for almost any learning to be seen as relevant by the learner. Without that, you're almost lost from the very get-go. But once you can point out or help them understand why they ought to be interested in this, why they should inquire into whatever the subject may be, kids or adults will learn anything at all, if they can find that relevance to it. So it's really a really critical aspect. And you have mentors as part of this whole thing, and teach kids the value of mentors, and I hope teach the mentors the value of what they're doing too.
Yeah, well, definitely with the parents, one of the things is to really focus on encouraging them to highlight female role models in STEM fields. Subtly, but continuously, and that's a big element. And I know in your work that's been huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you say a little more about that?
Within my school, or within this? Like for instance, we are always looking to find those positive role models for females. We have a science symposium that there's actually tomorrow, where there's going to be not men and women, but a lot of women that are going to be working with any student that comes in, helping them to learn about science, doing a hands-on thing with them. We do it in many other ways too, but that's a biggie for us.
Sure. I had the pleasure recently of meeting Millie Hughes-Fulford, Hawaii's only woman astronaut. Tells an amazing story about her whole background, about getting into the astronaut training program at quite not a young age, and how she was there apparently as a roughly a 40-year-old woman surrounded by these 18 to 20-year-old men all going through this astronaut training, you know, how she had to push very hard to continue, you know, to run the 6 miles carrying the pack or whatever, but sort of said this was actually turned out to be inspiring for the men too, because they wouldn't drop out if she wouldn't drop out, because, you know, I won't do that. So I think it's great, and you know, it's very exciting to hear of that as a part of your whole program. So what kind of audience or numbers are you hoping to get for this, or do you not know, because this is...
We're still accepting registration through next week, and our capacity is 150 girls and 75 parents.
Okay.
So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like you could have a significant impact at that level.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that would be wonderful to have. And trying to then help these parents must be a very tricky business because of the diversity of backgrounds. I'm sure you get parents who are themselves scientists and engineers versus you have parents who probably have very low levels of familiarity with any of that. So do you offer them sort of different options, or all the parents sort of put together? Or?
In this session, we're really offering them tools.
Okay.
So they will, and we'll show them how to use them in different scenarios. So some people will have, you know, an academic background in STEM, and they'll use them probably differently because the student themselves may be surrounded by more STEM within the family. But most of the tools are really usable across different types of households, and some of them include a Cooter interest evaluation that the Pacific American Foundation will be presenting that's been really effective across different types of interest levels and areas of interest among students. Also doing strengths finders, and strength finders is a Gallup tool. And the idea there is that instead of focusing on what is a child weak in, and you're just going to put all these resources and time and effort into that, you identify strengths. And strengths really are something that you build on for your entire life and think of becoming the best at. And that, I think, can be used, you know, regardless of the family's maybe exposure level to STEM. It allows the student and the parents to recognize that the efficiency, basically, and the effectiveness and the self-esteem and the self-awareness that's built around focusing on one's strengths. And there are other elements. There's an entrepreneurial component, because no matter what environment a student will go into in terms of their career, college, that entrepreneurial perspective is hugely valued. Even if, you know, if you're going into a non-business orientation, you still would be able to use those skills to run an effective organization. So things like that.
Absolutely. We're going to go to another break here. You're watching Likeable Science. I'm here with Gloria, Dawn, and Bernice from AAUW. We're talking about the Tech Savvy Conference coming up on March 14th, and we'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. That's Ted Ralston. You know, Ted is the host of Where the Road Leads. It shows every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. It's about technology. It's about how people collaborating and solve problems with modern technology. It's where the road leads. We all know that. We should all be listening. Join us there, 4 to 5 p.m. every Friday. Now, what about that do you agree with?
All of it.
I knew he'd say that. Aloha. Say aloha.
Aloha.
Good.
And you're back here on Likeable Science. I'm your host, Ethan Allen. ThinkTech Hawaii's Likeable Science show is shown every week at this time. And with me today on Likeable Science and helping to promote the idea of getting more people involved in science are 3 women from the American Association of University Women, Gloria, Dawn, and Bernice, and they are co-organizing, or they're the core of a team, I guess, who is organizing this Tech Savvy conference coming up on March 14th. This is a conference for grade 6 to 9 girls, but also for their parents, to bring the parents and get them involved so they will learn how to better support girls in pursuing STEM-related careers. And so we were talking a little bit about the idea of design thinking as a fun, engaging experience for the parents. So a wide variety of parents can apply skills pretty easily to help get their daughters keep their daughters engaged in STEM.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Is there a good example you have of some activity that goes along with?
Sure, sure. One of the elements of design thinking is really to work with the user and to go through an iteration using physical prototypes of the concept that you're trying to develop to solve a problem, the user's problem. So oftentimes we'll use materials that are kind of fun and funny. For some reason, pipe cleaners are like either people love them or they hate them because they make everything look kind of childish. And, but the idea is to have people interpret in 3 dimensions, really using spatial representation, concepts of a product or a service. And that's kind of fun because it takes parents usually out of their comfort zone. It leads kids right into their comfort zone because that's not a barrier yet for them, and it's actually a type of thinking and learning that would really be useful, especially for girls, where they sometimes lose that spatial reasoning component. It's really an important skill in STEM. So while it's kind of fun and funny to see all these colorful, models, essentially representations of a concept, it's designed also to encourage the parents to think of what ways can they talk through problems with their daughter. How can they actually have those funny materials around and say, well, let's see, what would that look like? Or take a napkin and, just at a restaurant, here's a toothpick and a napkin and a straw, and how would you structure that? That kind of hands-on thinking is actually really important, but it's also fun. And it's a way that breaks the barriers sometimes between the parent and the child, because oftentimes the child is so much better at making the thing, and the parent's object is going to, probably look pretty sad. but that's one thing. And also just learning how to iterate, how to fail, how to find out early what is not the answer, and not have a negative connotation about that, and celebrate that as great. You found something that we're not going to apply to this. That takes that off the table, and that's a progressive, positive aspect.
Sure, no, that's wonderful, and that's your point about spatial skills too is a critical one. It turns out that girls also typically do not develop spatial skills, at least in the same way or at the same rate that guys do, and that turns out to have implications for math success and all those areas. So it's wonderful that you're doing that, and I appreciate that kind of work. I used to, in a workshop, do an activity with paper, which people, of course, think of as flat and something you write on. And I would give people, say, 3 sheets of paper, notebook paper, and a fresh egg, and tell them that 5 minutes later they're going to have to let the egg go 18 inches above the table. And they've got 3 sheets of paper, and I don't want to have a bunch of broken eggs all around. It forces them, again, to think differently, how to use material differently. Not quite so good on the failure aspect, because if they do fail, it's pretty obvious. But that's a very important piece too. I think the whole business of teaching that there's nothing wrong at all with failure. Failure is simply inevitable and necessary step on the way to learning.
Yeah, a lot of times you learn more if something doesn't work out than you do if you get it the first time.
Absolutely. Far better in a sense to have your ideas or illusions challenged or broken apart, and it forces you to think more deeply about, well, really what was going on here? Why did that happen? Rather than, oh, it worked fine, now I can move on, without really considering all the aspects of an issue or problem.
Yeah, and it encourages the growth mindset, so that, you're not expecting, because some girls and young boys also, you go into something, you're very enthusiastic, and you're not good at it from the very start. So it's building that growth mindset that, yeah, well, it grows and you learn from your mistakes and the tests that fail.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
that's
such an important aspect too. It's coming out to be seen as really critical is people who have two different views of sort of people's intelligence, and one is this very fixed intelligence, and one is a growth mindset. That intelligence is a very fluid kind of thing that can be developed, which turns out to be a much more productive and effective way to look at intelligence, rather than viewing it as very fixed. When people view it as a very fixed thing, yes, they tend to give up more quickly on problems. They tend to downgrade their own abilities very quickly, limit themselves, think of others as limited, which leads to stereotyping and all sorts of negative connotations. Whereas with a growth mindset, thinking about intelligence as something that can be gained, can be learned, can be taught, they begin to sort of see the world as a boundless place with endless possibilities, and that with good collaboration among people, you can keep learning and teaching others, and they'll learn from you, and you'll learn from them, and the world will just be a better place.
It brings up a really important part of the design thinking session, because a lot of it is teaching people how to build on each other's ideas in a collaborative manner. So even teaching protocol, how do you encourage ideas from others and build on them? And almost really, how do you use language as a way to bridge ideas, and then visual representation. Again, going back to that spatial reasoning, but being able to translate what people are saying into some visual representation to get to the core concept.
Yeah, good point, because of the cultural and sometimes language barriers that are there. That is so important, and people are so different in how they speak about things, but also how they view things. I know my wife and I have sometimes challenges. If I try to draw a diagram of something to explain it to her, she looks at it and just like, it makes no sense, but she can take the pieces and put them together in a way that I simply cannot do at all. So it's very, very different areas. But I'm sorry, I was just thinking of something spun off that mind, the growth mindset. But I can't.
Or maybe one thing that might lead to that, or build on it, is how you look at other people. You mentioned stereotypes, and that's one of the things that this approach is really designed to teach parents, as well as the girls themselves, how to interact with other people without being sort of stifled by those stereotypes, and digging in. And the user interaction is one way of doing it, because you go through this very deep, layered process of finding out what is that person's true motivation. Not just how are they going to use this product, what are they really trying to solve? And then that gets you to a much more empathetic position. And that's very helpful when it comes to collaboration at any level.
Right, and that's actually, yeah, that's where I've been thinking. It's this whole, again, these cultural differences, because different people from different cultures will be more or less assertive in their ideas, and particularly in many cultures, women are not taught to be very assertive. Particularly in a lot of Pacific Island cultures, they're taught to be very, particularly in the presence of men, not to be assertive. And so teaching them there are ways to bring everyone's ideas to the table in a perfectly acceptable, polite sort of way is an extremely valuable skill set to develop.
And I think even that teamwork, how do you work within a team? If you're solving a STEM-based problem, you're going to need really an interdisciplinary approach oftentimes.
Yes.
And so how do you balance each other out? How do you manage that? How do you encourage each other to put forward your ideas and still learn leadership, in a way?
Right, and how it's really a matter of teaching sort of that shared leadership idea, that sort of interdependency, where everyone knows they've got a critical role to play, but understands that the other people all are playing equally critical roles too. And so maybe I'm really good on the details and you're really good on the big picture, and to get our project done, we sort of need both of those things to happen in some organized fashion. So we hope we have an organizer in the group too,
Yes.
Yeah, so that all sounds really, really wonderful. Can I ask a little bit about, you mentioned evaluation earlier. what sorts of follow-up surveys do you do? How do you attempt to find out what you've gotten done, and what do you want to see coming out of this?
Well, what we'd like to see is young girls realizing their goals of achieving higher education and the fact that it's possible. Really, that's the big picture.
Okay.
We'd also like to, as Bernice said, you were specifically mentioning the Windward area, but really there is an embarrassment of resources available to education that is not being tapped into. So the exposure to other companies who really want to participate in events like this and getting that kind of exposure.
That's interesting. It's nice to hear that there is a wealth of resources to tap into there. I had not realized that. It should make for good, interesting events then in the future, right?
Yes, we're finding we just need to ask.
Yeah, oftentimes that's true. We don't realize we're all sort of brought up not to want to do them, aren't we? We've got to overcome that.
Asking for help.
Right, and realize that it's part of that whole teamwork business, right? It's your team members are there to do exactly that. So, do you envision yourselves as doing this hopefully again, and in a year or two, maybe bring some of the girls back in to lead some sessions, do a little peer-to-peer kind of learning, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, absolutely. We'd like to do Tech Savvy, of course, as an annual event. And then AUW has another program. It's called Tech Trek, and it's actually a week-long camp for girls in STEM. So we'd like to graduate to that and run that in parallel with the Tech Savvy.
That can be fun.
Yes.
Either preparing for the Tech Savvy conference in the Tech Trek, you said? Yes, okay. Or follows out of it, yeah. That could be.
The American Association of University Women is typically thought of for university level. So, this is a way that we can start at the younger age, help them through the pipeline, going through college. And then we even have a program called Start Smart, where once they're in college, we teach them salary negotiation skills. And
very important.
Lots of leadership programs that we have for the girls.
Excellent. And so this is, you're already making a big leap, I understand, to younger ages.
Yes.
That's very admirable. My plea as somebody who studied a little bit about learning is to keep moving that direction, because so much of the neuroscience evidence says so much important learning takes place at much earlier ages than we really typically believe. Young children are capable of doing truly amazing feats of learning at awesomely early ages, and the sooner they get caught up in that idea of themselves as learners and as lovers of learning, then the better off they really are in life. So I think it's wonderful that you're doing it, and I urge you to keep pushing that envelope downward always. But it's great to hear that you've got that sense too that this ties in between these girls and college age, because I know certainly a fair number of people do get into college and stumble there and either drop out or fail or get discouraged at that stage too. So having that transition and programs to help support them if they hadn't, for instance, gotten good independent study habits going as part of their high school education and colleges.
Sure.
And that's actually one of our savvy skills choices. It's actually called how to find that golden ticket. So they're trying to show you can get into college. You just need to know the right steps to go through.
That's so important, particularly for first-generation college people who've come from families where no one else has gone to college, and they don't have that in their mindset.
And that kind of brings up even on the parent side, if this child is going to be the first-generation child, first-generation college student, how do you support them? How do you curb maybe some signals that you don't even realize you're sending? Sure. We saw quite a bit of that working with different families earlier outside of this program. So knowing that can have a huge impact on that child's decision making is important.
That's true. This has been such a fun, stimulating dialogue here, but I'm sorry to say we're running short on time now. And so you've been joining us on Likeable Science. We've been talking about the upcoming Tech Savvy Conference for Girls. That'll be on March 14th, an all-day conference for girls in grades 6 through 9 and their parents. And I've been here with Gloria, Dawn, and Bernice from AAUW talking about all kinds of aspects of this conference, and I look forward to, I wish I could be there, but I look forward to hearing about it in the future and maybe contributing to it in subsequent years here. Thank you so much for joining me and taking the time to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.